All right. What's going on, everybody? This is your boy James here, back for another video. And we're going to be doing all the NFC North teams for today. So we did all the NFC East teams. We did the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Washington Commanders, and the New York Giants. So we're going to be focusing on the NFC North teams. The first one we're going to do is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I've said it in a lot of my previous videos. There's a very good chance I believe in the Vikings this year. I think the Vikings are a sleeper team. I think Kirk Cousins is going to really step up to the next level in terms of his offensive play with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook is going to have a good year. I think Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne, like all those players on that team. I think the offensive line is also going to be improved as well. And I think the defense, there have been some good moves that the Vikings have done on defense, but we'll see how that goes. But I think that offense is really going to carry the team this year and be able to help the Vikings get back into the playoffs where they really deserve to be in the playoffs the last couple of seasons that they may have missed. So without a further ado, let's take a look at the schedule and see what the Vikings have to offer for us this year. All right, so this is a tough game for the Vikings. This is going to be a really big test for them to see how well they can do. So they play Green Bay in Minnesota. So the last couple of years, the Vikings have had some success with the Green Bay Packers. Last season, they were able to beat them at home, I believe, and then the Packers were able to obliterate them in Green Bay. So this game could go either way. I do believe that the Vikings are going to split with the Packers yet again this year, just because I think both of the teams in the division are going to be competing for the number one spot in the division, and maybe even try to find a place in the division for the playoffs. But honestly, I think with all the questions with Green Bay and how they're going to start out the season without Devontae Adams, kind of makes things very tricky. So I think what I'm going to do, I think it's kind of shocking that to really see the Packers start out 0-1, but I think they do. I think the Vikings win their first game of the season at home against the Packers. I think the Vikings will be more ready. I think they're going to be successful against the Green Bay run game. They might try to run the ball with Aaron Jones a little bit. I definitely can see them trying to pass along and everything, but I think the secondary of the Vikings is going to be improved a little bit this year. That might give Aaron Rodgers some problems, but I think they're going to split with the Packers this year. And I think this is going to be an early season win for the Vikings. I think they'll just have things figured out much quicker than Green Bay will without Devontae Adams. So I'm going to take the Vikings to win there. Then in week 2, I talked about it when I did the Eagles prediction video. I do believe that the Vikings are a better team than the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles secondary is going to be able to slow down Justin Jefferson and company. And I don't know if that defensive line is going to get to Kirk Cousins. They might be able to get a couple of sacks on him. I don't know for sure, but I think Kirk is really going to do what he can to get his receivers in the game and be able to use Dalvin Cook in the passing game as well a little bit and maybe run the ball. So, but I do think the Vikings are the superior team over the Eagles, and it's a Monday night game. So typically Kirk Cousins usually doesn't play well on a primetime game, but I think this year he's got some primetime games, and I think he might be successful in some of them. I think he's going to win this game in Philly. So that'll be a good one. And then you go back home and then you play the Detroit Lions. And the Detroit Lions beat the Vikings last year in Detroit. And I do see that again happening this year. I do think the Vikings are going to split with the Lions this year. But I think the Vikings are very good the first time when they play in Minnesota. So I think they're going to win the first matchup against the Lions. Then in week 4, you've got the Vikings and the Saints, a rematch from all the playoff games that they've played over the years, especially the ones with Stephon Diggs when he was on the team at the time, was got that last second touchdown with Case Keenum. And then the 2 years after that, I believe it was the COVID year of 2020, that playoff year within the wild card, the Vikings upset the Drew Brees when Drew Brees played for the Saints. Honestly, I could see this game really going either way, to be quite honest with you. I think both teams are sneaky, both sleeper teams that you don't want to mess around with. But I think as of right now, I think I would rather trust Kirk Cousins than Jameis Winston right now when it comes to passing the ball. Yes, I think Kirk Cousins is going to turn the ball over against the Saints defense. The Saints defense is very good, but I think with this with the elite group with Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, I think Kirk can be successful in that part and be able to get all the plays that he needs to make sure that they score some points on the board. So I think it's crazy. It kind of does sound, especially when they play in the dome. I do think the Vikings do have a chance to beat the Saints on the road, and that's kind of sounds crazy to think, but it's not. It's really not. It's been seen before. For whatever reason, they always do well when they play in the dome. So I'm going to take the Vikings to win that game. I think the Vikings can do it, and I think Kirk Cousins can pull off some big plays that might be able to get them that win. And then the Chicago Bears, there's not really a whole lot to really worry about, to really scare you about the Chicago Bears this year. But specifically when they go to Chicago, it's always a slugfest. It's never a very good game by either team. So I think the Vikings, I definitely believe that the Vikings are better than the Bears by a mile. But I do think they're going to split this year with the Bears. I think they're going to win at home, and then we'll take a look when we get to the later part of the season. But I also do think I do think towards the end of the season, and depending on if either the Packers have already clinched the division or if it's neck and neck, I could see the Vikings sitting out all of their good players in that game, and the Bears could win that last game of the season. But I think that's really just going to depend on the division. But I could definitely see the Bears and the Vikings definitely splitting with each other this year. Then week 6, you have the Vikings. They go to Miami. I think it's always tough when you go to play across the country or even down below the country, down south. It's always very hot in Miami. It's week 6, so it's mid-October at that point, and Florida can still get hot, pretty hot down there, especially in southern Florida where Miami is. But I think the Vikings are too good. I think it will be interesting to see a Justin Jefferson and Xavier Howard matchup. But I think Kirk Cousins and company, I think they'll be able to be successful in that game and be able to beat the Dolphins in that matchup. So then you're going into the bye week in week 7. You got a 6-0 record. And so some people may be saying that sounds crazy, but honestly, all of these games that they are playing the first 6 weeks of the season, they're all pretty winnable games, to be quite honest with you. I think the Vikings could really win any of these games here the first 6 weeks. Or at worst, honestly, if at worst, I think they could go 3-3. But I honestly think there's a possibility that the Vikings could go 6-0 during the first 6 weeks of the season. Then after that, you've got the Arizona Cardinals playing in Minnesota. I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in Arizona this year. I think they're going to take a step back this year, especially if there's a lot of drama going on with Kyler Murray and he's not really playing there anymore. I think this team is going to struggle a little bit early on. And especially without DeAndre Hopkins, will probably make some difference in this offense for the Arizona Cardinals. So I do think the Vikings do get their revenge from the Cardinals a year ago, and they do win that game. Week 9, Kirk Cousins goes back to Washington to play against his former team. I talked about that in my previous video when I did the Washington Commanders. I think the Vikings should be able to win that game against the Commanders. I think the biggest part of Washington to really be concerned about is the defensive line. But honestly, if I'm being completely honest with you, though, I think Kirk Cousins will be well protected against that defense and get that passing game going, because I think the secondary and the Washington part of their defense is still not as strong as it could be. And I think Justin Jefferson and company can be able to score some touchdowns on Washington. And I think the Vikings defense will get to I think they might be able to get a good shot of being able to get to Carson Wentz and being able to force some turnovers in that game. So I think as long as they can do that, I think they beat the Washington Commanders with no problems. And then you go into week 10, you play the Buffalo Bills. I talked about this. This is going to be a pretty good game, honestly. think it's a better game than people really think. Josh Allen versus Kirk Cousins. The last time these two have met, Josh Allen was in his rookie season, and he was not a great quarterback in his rookie season, but he found a way to really obliterate the Vikings defense, and that Vikings defense then was supposed to be very good. And honestly, I can see that continuing to happen. I think the Bills do give the Vikings their very first loss of the season. I think the Bills are just too superior. They have, I think that defense too is going to be kind of interesting to see how they do. I think it can be a very close game, but I could also see it going like a one-sided game. And I think the Bills with Josh Allen will be able to get that game done. So I'm taking the Bills in that game. Then in week 11, you got the Dallas Cowboys, and they're traveling to the Minnesota Vikings to play there. I do see this game going either way, but I do think the Vikings do take they do get the revenge on the team that they lost to a year ago. And I think they're honestly, they're a better team personally. I think right now, the way they're looking like they're a better coach team. So I'm going to pick for them to beat the Cowboys at home. Then week 12, we have the New England Patriots going to Minnesota to play the Vikings on Thursday night, Thanksgiving night. I can see this game going either way. I think both teams are pretty similar to one another. I think they both like to really rely on the run game. But I think really what really is the difference for this game is the coaching. I think Bill Belichick is honestly a much better coach than Kevin O'Connell. We haven't really seen a whole lot with Kevin O'Connell yet with him. I don't remember off the top of my head if I picked New England to win that matchup or if I picked the Vikings, but the Vikings are very hard to play at home. So honestly, I can see this game going really either way. I'm going to go back to that and again because I kind of forgot where I picked this game. I think I picked the Vikings to win, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to go back to that game in just a sec. Then week 13, you've got the Jets going to the Vikings. As much as improved of a team that the Jets are, I still think the Vikings are still going to find ways to beat the Jets. Honestly, I don't think there's really a secondary on that defensive side of the Jets football is going to be able to slow down Dalvin Cook or Justin Jefferson. I think the only thing that their strongest point is going to be is their run defense. So, I mean, they could get to Dalvin Cook a little bit, but I think if they get him into the passing game a little bit more, I think it's going to be a little more difficult for the Jets defense to slow down. So I'm going to take the Vikings to win that one. Then I talked about it. I did pick the Vikings in earlier in the season. It was week 3. I did pick the Vikings to win against the Detroit Lions at home. I am going to pick the Lions to win in Detroit to split things up with the Vikings. Now, this is another game, too. The Colts and the Vikings, I can see this game going either way in week 15. I think the Colts are a very good team. I think they can do what they can to really slow down, this elite offense that the Vikings do have in Justin Jefferson and company. And I think this was another game. I think I did pick the Vikings to win this game too. I really do think I did pick the Vikings to win this game. But I think I'm going to go back to that game as well because they're both the Patriots and the Colts games are both very hard games to figure out. So I'm going to go back to that game in just a sec. Then you got the Giants going to Minnesota. I'm going to pick the Vikings. I did pick the Vikings to win that game. I think they're just a better team overall, and it's going to give Kirk Cousins and company some difficult times to try and win that game. Then Lambeau Field, the Vikings visit the Packers. I'm picking Aaron Rodgers at home. At that point in the season, the Packers are going to be playing pretty hot. They're going to be wanting to get themselves back into playoff contention. It might even be a seal the deal kind of a game for the division title too. So I'm going to pick the Vikings to win there. The Packers to win there. And then in week 18, you've got the Vikings at the Chicago Bears. For whatever reason, and I think it's because of the atmosphere and the weather predicaments as well in Chicago, I think that's what really gives Kirk Cousins some issues in playing well there. Even in the wins that he has won in Chicago were not very pretty wins. So honestly, as bad of a team as Chicago is, I think the Chicago Bears do win that final game of the season because I honestly think that the Bears are going to try to be a feisty team. in some games, but because this is a rivalry game, it's a division rival. It's I can't. I just don't think Kirk Cousins is going to have a good game in Chicago. I think Chicago is going to do everything that they can possible to try and upset the Vikings in one way or take away a division title for them from them. I could be wrong, but I that's what I do see for this year. And then you're looking at weeks 12 and week 15. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was all the other games. Yeah. So I think it's just weeks 12 and 15 I was looking at. They're going to lose. I believe I did have them losing either one of these two games, I want to say. But let me just check on that real quick. Hold on one second. I'll double check on that. Okay, so I was able to look at it again. I had to rewatch some of my videos to see where I did pick them. So I picked the Patriots to win in week 12, and then in week 15 I did pick them to beat the Colts. Okay. And I do remember the reasonings behind them. And one of them was because of the coaching advantage in New England. And then with week 15, I think it's going to be hard for the Colts pass rush. While it is improved and it's going to be really good this year, I think it's going to give the Vikings the advantage to be able to use Justin Jefferson, and I think it's going to be kind of hard for corners to be able to stop him. So now we're looking at the Minnesota Vikings at a 12-5 record, 3-3 in the division. I think this is a pretty solid record, and honestly, I think this is a ceiling record for the Vikings because I don't really see them being anything better than 12-5, but I think the 12-5 record is a pretty solid record for them. I think at worst, if anything, I think at worst, this Vikings team could either be, I think they could be 8-9, really is their worst record. I think they can end up being, but I think 12-5 is a good ceiling for them. I think there are going to be some games in the later part of the season, like they're going to be playing some really tough games with teams like the Bills, the Patriots, the Cowboys will be tough for them. The Colts and Green Bay again. They're all tough teams for Minnesota, and I think that will be like the biggest difference maker for some of those games. If they can win, like if they can become 6-0 early in the season, then lose some of these games they know they can't afford to lose. That's what will happen. But I think 12-5 is a good record for the Vikings. Let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if you think this is a good record for them. Do you think they'll be better than that? Do you think they'll be worse than that or around the same? Let me know in the comments down below. And then for our next one, we will do the Green Bay Packers. I'm sorry, we'll actually do the Detroit Lions as the next video for this one. So I hope you all are able to stick around for that.